Hello again, everybody. This is Derek, and I am coming back at you with another wargaming and miniature video. In today's video, we're going to make some roads for wargaming. Now, you can use this technique that I'm about to use for any width of road that you want. I recommend a 2-inch wide road for 15 millimeter and maybe a 3 or 4 inch wide road for your 28 millimeters. Now, because I'm doing some wargaming in 15 millimeter, I want to make some roads that will be compatible with that. Now, you can make your roads in any length, right? If you get a piece of felt that's 3 feet long and you want to make a 3-foot road and lay it on your table, that's perfectly fine. I am not going to do that. What I plan to do is to make shorter strips and then lay them on the table and combine them to form a long road. Now, the industry standard is a 12-inch road. I am going to make some 12-inch roads, but I also want to make some shorter roads, like maybe 6 inches. And then I also want to make some road intersections. And you can do that all using this technique. Okay, so in today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to make some shorter roads. And I'm just going to cut the felt. Now, this is a fairly stiff felt. It's not extremely stiff. It's not like this felt, which you can feel is like really stiff. But it's also not like this felt, which is like super flexible. It's kind of a mid-grade felt. But you can use any felt, any stiffness. So I'm just going to take this. Oh, let's see how wide this thing is. Okay, it's just over 8 inches. 8 1/4. That seems like a really good length for what I want to do today. And again, your roads don't have to be perfect. Now I'm using a hobby knife. Or a blade. So there's a couple of straightaways. Now I want to do a couple of intersections. So here we go. This is going to be just... Now, my intersections, I don't want to be 8 inches. I actually want them to be right around 6 inches or something like that. But again, it doesn't matter. And then I can put this away. Alright, so that should be a 6-inch length right there. Now, I'm going to take and cut it at 2 inches just to get me started. Right there. I'm going to flip it around, cut it at 2 inches. Again, just to get me started. All right. So now we know that if these are ends, they're going to match up with these roads, right, on both sides. Got the 2-inch roads. Now, you might say, Derek, is 2 inches too wide? Well, this is a 15 millimeter Tiger tank, and I want you to be able to see that it fits pretty comfortably on the road. And if I put any kind of grass or edging along the outer edge, then it fits just perfect, right? Also, I have some of the standard or medium bases for Flames of War, and the large bases are also this wide. It's the same width, which is about 2 inches. So if you put that on the road, there you go. You got like a perfect size. So 2 inches is where it's at. All right. So we have cut. We started here and there, right? But that's not. That's not the end of it. I'm not just going to cut all the way across. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little bit in, and it doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm going to take a curve and curve it like that. Okay? All right, so far so good. Now, depending on the angle that I want this road to be at, which is about this angle, okay, I need it to go out just a little bit more. The reason why is if I want to butt a road up against the edge of it, I don't want that road to be intermixed with this road. And I'm just giving myself a dotted line to get a general idea of where I need to cut. All right, so we'll cut in just a little bit more. And then I'll do kind of a circle. Okay, so we've got ourselves a little Y intersection right there, right? And if I had a road could butt up against it there, it could butt up against it there, and it could butt up against it there. All right. Now I can do this again. Going this way, right? Because this, before you texture it, which we'll be doing here in a later step, I can decide to do it this way, or I could decide to do it that way. So let's kind of try to use the same cut And then this will go down here to wherever it needs to go. So I already know this is going to be the top. Okay. And then I cut that little circle. Okay. And then we've got our second road intersection, right? So we can go like that. Now we could always make them sharp, like T intersections. I can make it a four-way intersection. I can make a lot of these, but these are the four we're going to be working with today. The two straights and the intersections. All right, so let's move on to the next step. All right, guys, so now the next step, we're going to actually texture the roads, giving them a little bit of, ruts and stuff like that. So before we do that, I need to lay down some wax paper because we're going to make a mess, and I don't want plaster going everywhere. Now we're going to go opposite directions with the roads. That way we can have our intersection going one way or the other. All right, so I've got some water here that maybe I'll add a little bit more water so that I can keep my hands or my fingers clean while we're doing this texturing. Now I'm using Alex Plus, which is an acrylic latex caulk plus silicone. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the silicone directly onto the felt. All right, so I'm going to wet my fingers down in the water. I've got a bowl here of water. I'm going to get my fingers wet so that I can more easily manipulate the caulk where it doesn't stick to your fingers. Now, I'm deliberately trying to cover the entire piece of felt, but I'm also deliberately trying to go over the edge so that the caulk can help secure the felt down to the paper. Now you want there to be no felt showing through. You want it to be completely covered in this acrylic latex. Basically, you don't want any felt fibers shining through. It's okay because you're going to be applying a color of paint on top of this. Okay. So this is the situation where I I only use parallel strokes, and I try to thin it out in the middle, but you don't have to. You can make it as thick as you want it along the outer edges. But I'm using parallel strokes with my finger because that's the way the vehicles would be traveling, or the carts or buggies or whatever, tanks. Okay, so we're going to leave that. Like that. We're going to let that dry, and I'm going to do the same on all of these, and we can do that off camera. You don't necessarily need to see that. All right, so now on this road intersection, right, I am deliberately trying to parallel the road, but because there is a Y intersection here, I am also trying to parallel that road at the same time, right? So give it the illusion that buggies, tanks, cars, wagons would travel down the intersection. Now, on this end of this piece of felt, it was where the fold of the felt was, because this felt was delivered folded in half, and the end of the felt is sticking up, or it's raised. So what I did was I went over the edge with this Alex, right? Well, I did it on all of them really, but this one specifically to hold it flat against the paper, and hopefully that'll counteract the desire to lift up. All right, so we're going to let that dry, and we'll come back in about 30 minutes to an hour to allow that to dry. But before we do that, oh yeah, I got a step that I need to do. So what I'm doing is now I'm grabbing some grit, which is basically just sand. Now in my case, I've got sand mixed in with, or some talus mixed in with my sand. So what I'm trying to do is just pinch out some sand with very little talus, and then I'm going to sprinkle it on the Alex. Just giving it a little bit of grit. You don't need to do too much. It's just, whoa, you don't want that. And then what we'll do is we'll let that dry, let it soak into the Alex, and then come back with the next step after about an hour. All right, I'll see you in just a minute. All right, we are back with the roads. Everything is dry. Now, remember when I was sprinkling the sand on this, I'm sure I got some sand on this wax paper. So what I'm going to try to do is recover any loose sand by just pouring it or shaking it off back into my tub there. All right, so now there shouldn't be any loose sand on here. Now you can see that the roads have stuck to the wax paper. That's great. That means they've kept their form. Okay, and I can get this out of the way. All right, so the next step is to color these. Now, we're going to put a couple of different colors, but the main color that I'm going to be using is the Krylon Earth Brown, which is a very dark brown. It's basically this color. We're going to take a hobby, or I'm sorry, just a standard brush, paint old brush, and then we will just paint our roads while they are still on or still stuck to the wax paper. Now this is really just the undercoat or the base coat. Because when I eventually peel these roads off of the wax paper, there will be Alex, or I should say latex, the acrylic caulk, will have residue along the edges, and I'll be using a knife to cut all that residue off to bring it back to the proper size. And the downside by doing that is it will expose it'll expose the white caulk underneath in those areas that I cut off. But when I go to do the second color on the road, at that point I'll be able to fix all those gaps in the road. Okay, so that is beautiful. So we're going to let this dry, and once that's dry, in a couple hours, then we'll come back for the next step. I'll see you then. These roads should be dry. So now what I need to do is cut off the excess caulk and paint from the edges of these roads. So I'm going to bring my cutting mat in so I can cut on it. And then we're going to start peeling the roads off of this wax paper. There's one. And just looking at it, you can see there's a lot of excess caulk, right? Okay. So now I take my knife and I cut the excess off along the edge of the felt. Now when you cut this excess paint and caulk off the ends, it's going to leave some exposed caulk because you cut the paint off on the ends and on the sides. So that's going to be taken care of with the paint. All right, now on these straightaways it should be a lot easier because I don't have any curves. Alright, so now I'm just going to flip this wax paper over so that we can work on the back side of it. I'm going to lay these back down. Now, having cut off the ends, or I should say the sides, you're going to have some exposed caulk, right? Where the paint was also cut off, but that's okay. So now I'm going to take some acrylic nutmeg brown from Apple Barrel, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of water, make a 2-part acrylic and 1-part water mix. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it on, but before I brush it on, I want to go through each of the pieces, and I want to ensure that I'm correcting any of the cuts. That's the first thing I want to do. Now I'm going to be making some asphalt roads in an upcoming video, so stay tuned to my channel, like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the notification icon, because when I do those asphalt roads, you might want to come back and check that out. They're going to be done a little bit differently. Plus, I'm going to be doing some cobblestone roads as well. But today, these are dirt roads, country roads, if you will. And you can see some of this paint has started to run. And that's because it's got a pretty high water content. Now, part of the reason why I'm doing, well, the main reason why I'm doing a high water content is so that it doesn't dry nutmeg. It'll blend with the dark earth, because the water has separated the pigments. You'll see what the effect looks like when it dries. Okay, so that corrects all the mistakes. So now we take some of this nutmeg water mix, and I paint it on in ovals where the length of the oval goes down the road. And if I see any paint puddling up, to be sure to strike that with some paint. Don't want any puddles. I don't want any thick paint areas. I want it to be blended. If that makes any kind of sense. Be sure you make it all the way to the end. Most of my strokes going the length of the road, parallel to the road. This is getting there. Actually, this is good coverage as well. Now don't forget the side road. And this is not the final coat. This is just the current highlight. Alright, so we're going to let those that color dry before we move on to the next step. Alright, so these roads are dry And so what I'm going to do now is, the next step is I'm going to take some folk art light brown. It's called Camel. And I'm going to put a little bit in this mixing cup. There we go. And I'm bringing out a chipping brush because what I'm going to do is do a little dry brushing. Wipe most of it off on my paper towel. And then I'm going to make 3 stripes. 1 down each side, right? And then 1 down the middle. But I'm doing it with the wide edge so it'll go, so the paint will go all over the place. Okay, and then I'll focus down the middle, focus along the edges. There you go. So I'm giving the illusion that there's wheel ruts or tracks, you know what I mean? Now I do plan to put some vegetation along the outer edge of this road. Alright, so that's the end of the dry brushing on those guys. So I'm going to let that sit for maybe 15 minutes or so before I move on to the next step. Alright, we are back with our roads. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a border of flock. So I have a box here with where I obviously did the roads. And we're going to put the road pieces in this box so I don't get flock all over the place. I don't flock it up. We've got some Elmer's glue and some water. And what I plan to do is go right along the edge, maybe about 5 millimeters, maybe 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. Not the ends of the roads, just the sides of the roads. I got that glue water mixture. I'll have to come back to touch it up to make sure that it's still good because I'm trying to do all 4 at the same time. Now with the roads being 2 inches wide and the grass edging being about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little more, up to 1/4 of an inch. I'm trying not to do 1/4 of an inch, but at least that'll give you about 1.5 inches of actual road down the middle. And I'll compare it to some vehicles once it's all said and done, just so you can see, you know, in the final result. Yep, I think that's all good. And we are using today, we're using blended turf from Woodland Scenics, the Earth Blend. And you might ask me, Derek, why are you using Earth Blend and not the Green Blend? Because the Green Blend would be more compatible with my tablecloth, my battlefield ground cloth. Well, that's exactly why I'm not using the Green Blend. I'm going for something that is a subtle difference, and that's not a perfect match with the table. Because then your roads will have a distinct border and not blend in with the ground. I'm trying to get it to be distinct. Whoa, that's maybe too much. Okay, so if I look at my covering, if I see any white shining through from the glue, I'm going to give it a little extra coat because I want it to be a little extra thick on the edges and let it soak into the glue. Okay, so now I have to let this dry before I shake anything off or add any other details or anything like that. Now on these dirt roads, I've decided not to do any mid-road grass. You could always do like a bead of additional caulk to make it a bump along the edges or down the center if you wanted to do that. And then you could also flock down the center, maybe just put a bead of glue down the center and flock that if you wanted to. Those types of roads did appear once the automobile was invented. So that did actually start happening in the late 1800s, right? 1879, something like that, is when dirt roads with the center rut started to become popular. But not really, because there were still a lot of horse-drawn buggies and stuff like that. But in the Napoleonic period, or as far back as, the Romans, American War of Independence, those roads would not have a center rut. So I've decided not to do it. So I can use these during my American War of Independence, my Napoleonics, my ancients. But I also can use them during World War II. They just won't have that center rut. All right, so we're going to set these off to the side, let these dry for about 30 minutes, and then we'll come back to them. All right, welcome back. We are working with the roads. We are going to be applying, I've already brushed off all the excess flock. This right here could be the finished product, but what I want to do is put some coarse turf on there as well, and we're gonna dabble in certain areas. So let me go ahead and get some Elmer's, add a little water, stir that up. There we go. Now I'm only going to put it in strategic locations, like where the road kind of does a sharp turn. Might put it close to the edge. So I'm not even covering all of the blended turf. I'm just randomly putting spots down and trying to keep it pretty close to the edge. But if it doesn't go all the way to the edge, that's fine. I'm going to do that same thing. Now, if you notice, I'm deliberately putting it close to the end of the road. Now, I'm doing that partially because when I butt two roads up against each other, this coarse turf will kind of help disguise the fact that there's a seam. I'm kind of just putting this down in splotches. Now I could use actual clump foliage or tufts along the side, but those would stick up too far, and I just want a subtle color change and bush impressions, but not enough to make the roads three-dimensional. All right. Now I'm just going to take my coarse turf here and I'm going to sprinkle it on those spots. So now anywhere where the white glue shines through, I'm going to make sure that I focus on covering that so I don't see any glue. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to rely on gravity to grab a hold of the coarse turf. I'm actually going to gently push down on the coarse turf, pushing it down into the glue. All right, so now I'm going to let the coarse turf soak into the elmers, and once the elmers, well, after about 30 minutes, I'm going to shake off any excess coarse turf, and then I'm going to let the elmers cure for another 30 minutes, and then I'll brush everything off. So I'll see you back in about an hour. All right, I'll see you then. All right, guys, we are looking at these roads. Now, I knocked off the majority of the coarse turf, but of course, there's probably a little bit left. So I'm using a makeup brush which has very soft bristles and just rubbing it along the sides, knocking off any excess foliage that might have fallen off during gameplay. Basically just cleaning them off. Plus it's bringing the edge of the roads more making them flatter so that they, when they lay on the table, there won't be these giant bushes sticking up. Not like if I had used clump foliage. I think I might have mentioned that earlier. I think I'm going to have to make a bunch of these roads and put them on sale because I think they look awesome. You'll have to tell me what you think of them. But I think they look awesome. Okay, so let me go ahead and clean up my table, and then what I'll do is I'll lay some roads down on the table, and then you get with some figures, and we'll get to see them in their full glory. All right, give me a second while I pick everything up, and I'll be right back. All right, I got the roads laid out. I have them sitting out next to some fields so that you can see, you know, how they all lay out and what they look like, you know, what they might look like on the table. And you can see the detail on the roads. And I went ahead and put a firefly out here just so you can kind of see the scale of how the 2-inch road would look. Here's some infantry, and I've got an Opal Blitz right here. Now, this is a Pack 40, which is, you know, a 75 millimeter anti-tank gun. I have it based on a large Flames of War base, and if you were to use that on the road, it would fit just nicely. It would fit in there perfectly. And if I was to tow it, I'd have the truck, you know, back to the, like that. And I even have a Tiger here showing you that even a Tiger would fit in the road. I compared the Tiger to a Panzer IV with skirts, and a Panzer IV with skirts is about the same width as a Tiger, which I didn't realize, but it is. Yeah, so if you have your standard Flames of War medium-sized bases, they would fit in there just fine. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed these roads. I plan to make quite a bit for myself, but I also plan to make a bunch of those for my eBay store. So you should come and check that out. Plus, I'm going to make some paved roads as well. That'll be in an upcoming video. So be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you in the next video.